Supreme Court upheld Donald Trump's Muslim ban. But maybe I shouldn't be calling it that, since the Supreme Court seems convinced that Muslim religion, none of that has anything to do with it. But if you were paying attention during the campaign, you might have gotten a different story out of Donald Trump. And I do want to talk about this, not just in terms of the policy, but its effect on real people. And so we invite to the show now Alexandra Shiva. She's a documentary filmmaker who her new film is This Is Home, a refugee story, airing now on Epix, where she follows 4 Syrian refugee families that have been resettled into Baltimore during their initial months of acclimation to American society. Welcome to the show, Alexandra.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very glad to have you here. So I don't know if you were able to hear my introduction, but the Supreme Court not convinced that this travel ban has anything to do with religion. What is your interpretation?
I mean, they're definitely targeting Muslim majority nations. So I don't really understand how they can say that it doesn't have to do with religion. And I heard what you said about affecting real people. And that's actually what, I spent the last 2 years working on, was a film that was, it actually wasn't meant to be political. It was just about people, real people, humanizing people that, maybe we don't have a lot of exposure to in this country.
And I do want to actually talk about your experience with those families and what it's been like for them, trying to integrate into a society that has some bizarre ideas of what it means to be a refugee from Syria. But in terms of the travel ban, what is the likely immediate and long-term effect of this for people coming from Syria, other countries? How is this going to impact their lives?
They have no hope of being reunited with their families. That's number one. So people who came and then left family members who were on waiting lists, who are trying to, who are going through the 18-month to 2-year process. These are people who won't see their family members again. For people who are pending asylum, I think it's terrifying because what does it mean about attitudes toward people from Syria? So I think that it's a very scary time, and it's hard to go from a place that's destroyed, that you didn't want to leave, come to a place that is, not your home, not your culture, and try to integrate, and then find out that they would like to make sure that nobody from your country comes here.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I had been thinking about the potential stopping people in the future from coming. I hadn't thought about it in terms of the families that have already been split up. And obviously we've been having a national conversation about family separation. It's interesting that we have yet another example of it so soon afterward. So Donald Trump has pitched, originally the travel ban was pitched as a 90-day thing. We need this so that we can get an idea of what's going on, set up new vetting. Right. I have seen no indication that he's made any progress on what was supposed to take 90 days. We're now more than a year into this. Is it your belief that this will be a temporary measure, or do you think this could become much more long-lasting?
My fear is that it will become much more long-lasting, and that there are hundreds and hundreds of refugees that are from these nations that are now in the ban, who were vetted, who went through the process, who were ready to come, and are just now in a holding pattern in various different parts of the world, or in refugee camps, and mostly in refugee camps. And the idea that, I think that the administration is trying to bring it to a halt. From what I understand, the numbers went from 100 and something thousand refugees that the resettlement program was going to take in, and then now it's 45, but that's the maximum. So it's not that and that's the lowest number since 1980. So it's not that they're going to take in 45,000, it's that they will take in no more than 45,000. But the way that it's structured, it's very complex, but the way that the resettlement program is structured federally, and then how it interfaces with various different resettlement organizations, is that number will be more like 20,000, 22,000 people.
And I had actually read, I could be wrong, but I had read that so far this year, I believe 13 had been resettled, not 1,000. 13.
No, I think it was 11.
Yeah.
11.
And I'm just reading. Hi, I'm reading. Yeah, from in April, NPR did a story that 11 Syrians had been settled since October of last year. The number is 44.
Yeah. Well, obviously devastating change for people trying to flee the continuing violence there. But as I said, I do want to talk about your documentary. So we have just a brief excerpt from your trailer we'd like to show the audience.
في ناس راحوا ولادها قدام عينها. يعني إيش وشو يعني ولادي طلعوا.
When people come to us, they have 8 months to be self-sufficient.
حابب نسيهم الألم اللي شافوه بسوريا. بدي أضطر أسس بنيان في أمريكا.
The purpose of cultural orientation is to help you build life skills that you will need during your first 8 months in America.
The day that I come here, I feel that it's my country, really.
So as we said, you followed a number of different families. What has their experience been so far? Have they been accepted in American society?
They've actually had an easier time than I think. I think it depends on the communities that they're placed in. I feel like there have been a lot of incredibly supportive people in Baltimore. These were all families in Baltimore who, and we address that in the film, which is that, you know, there are a lot of ways to incorporate refugees and to integrate them. And the film is quite hopeful. It's not a dire, I mean, the situation is dire because they have nowhere else to go, and many of them would rather be home. But they are getting jobs and they are acclimating. It's a very intense 8-month period that we show in the film. They have about 8 months of support from the International Rescue Committee. They get 90 days from the government.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's a lot. I always say that if I were to move from New York City to Baltimore, it would take me 2 years to feel adjusted. So I can only imagine what it would be like to move culture and language and everything that I know. So it's a lot, but they're doing well. They are doing well, and they've made American friends. And there's a scene in the film where Leah Hayes, who's this incredible woman who brings in Medea, who is one of the subjects of the film, to her church and says, you know, would you like to cater an event for my church? We'll do a Syrian cultural exchange. And she ends up cooking for 130 people, and it's sold out. And it's really an incredible moment. And then they repeated it. So that kind of thing is, you know, the idea of the film is there's so much you can do in your local communities to be involved and to welcome refugees.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. It's airing now on Epix. This is Home, a refugee story. Thank you, Alexandra, for joining us and talking about your experience.
Thank you so much for having me.